What happened to the Invictus? And I have a follow-up question, a science question. How did the Galactic Empire build such a ship? On the Foundation TV show, the Invictus is an Imperial warship, a jump ship that uses technology considered obsolete and even ancient by the time of the Cleonic dynasty. Let's recall that Cleons had enslaved the Spacers, a genetically augmented group of people who can fold space and time, on the TV show. In the books, the Spacers are quite different. But on the TV show, Spacers were forced to serve as navigators for Imperial jump ships. Their genetic augments required a micronutrient called opalesque, which the Empire withholds from them unless the Spacers hand over 10% of their offspring to serve as a slave workforce to navigate the Empire's newer jump ships. The 10% was considered a tithe, and the Empire threatened to increase the percentage if the Spacers complained. Now, as we watched in Season 2, the Foundation developed a synthetic opalesque and used it to convince the Spacers to rebel against the Empire. Now, that's how the Spacers were set free from bondage, although a great number of the existing slave workforce died during the rebellion. They sacrificed themselves to make a better life for the rest of their people. But the Invictus is older than the Imperial warships navigated by Spacers. It was the crown jewel of the Empire's fleet during the time of Emperor Taurelian. He was before the Cleons. The ship is powered by a singularity, which is a point of density believed to be infinitely dense and exists at the center of black holes. Now, the show doesn't explain how the Empire managed to create a singularity, if that's what the Empire did. But the singularity on the Invictus powered not only the ship's jump drive, but also the weapon systems. Now, we watched in Season 3 how the Novacula harnesses the power of a black hole to create a weapon of fearsome power. But creating a black hole is a different matter. Can a singularity be created artificially, or can it only be harnessed? Now, that's my science question, and I believe it's a central question on the TV show as well. During the time of Emperor Taurelian, apparently, the crew of this massive starship lost control of the jump drive, and it began just jumping from place to place at random. There was no predicting where the ship would show up next. Now, we're told that the crew ran out of food, eventually turned on each other, and by the time of the Cleonic Empire in Season 1 of the TV show, the Invictus is a ghost ship that appears randomly in different parts of the galaxy. In Season 1, it appeared near Terminus, the original homeworld of the First Foundation. On another planet in the Outer Reach, Anacreon, rebels were seeking vengeance against the Empire for the near destruction of its homeworld by the Empire, which in turn was seeking vengeance against Anacreon for its alleged role in destroying the Star Bridge, the Empire's floating city stretching from the surface of the planet Trantor to the stars. 100 million people died when the Star Bridge was destroyed. It was believed rebels from Anacreon and Thespis blew up the Star Bridge, but in Season 3, it's revealed that Demerzel was responsible and pinned the blame on Anacreon and Thespis. Now watch my recap of Season 3, Episode 4 for details on why she did that. The Anacreon rebels, led by the Grand Huntress Farah Kian, a scary woman. The actress did a great job. Her name is Kubra Sate. The Grand Huntress kidnaps members of the Foundation and boards the Invictus. Her plan is to jump the ship to Trantor and destroy the home planet of the Empire in retribution. Farah says when the Invictus first appeared, it seemed to be calling to her, and she recognized her purpose, she says. On board the Invictus, they find the crew members' bodies from centuries ago, rotting, frozen, and floating in zero gravity. On the ship's bridge, they find the body of the captain. She killed herself after scrawling the word exo in blood on the navigation orb. One of the Foundationers, Louis Perrin, theorizes it could mean executive officer. Maybe someone in her command was responsible for the mutiny. But Salvor Hardin tells him exo also means from outside. So they theorize the ship could have jumped outside the galaxy and encountered a hostile force. And that seems to be what happened, as we're shown in Season 3, Episode 2. One of the Harry Seldons, who received a new body and a chance to redeem his life, tells Gail Dornick that Psychohistory predicts 8 crises before a new empire rises that will replace the Galactic Empire after its fall. The next empire is supposed to save humanity from a predicted 30,000 years of chaos and barbarism. Psychohistory predicts that those years can be reduced to a mere 1,000, and that the Foundation, first and second, will become that next empire. Harry also tells Gale that if the Mule is defeated, the path of history is leading them toward the 8th Selden crisis, and he points to the Invictus in the math bubble. We're shown seemingly what happened to the Invictus. The ship jumped outside the galaxy, outside the Milky Way into the Andromeda galaxy, and the ship's sensors on board the Invictus say life form detected. Now, that life form is hostile, I would guess, and Harry tells Gale that it's beyond psychohistory at that point. After the crisis with Anacreon and Thespis was resolved, the Foundation commandeered the Invictus and reverse-engineered it to develop their own Whisper ships, and in fact the Invictus was placed in service as part of the Foundation's Whisper fleet. So, let's think about this. The Invictus jumpdrive is supposedly older technology, ancient even, but it's used to develop the Foundation's cutting-edge Whisper fleet. Let's recall that in Season 2, Episode 9, Cleon 17 ordered the Imperial fleet to destroy the Invictus by crashing it into the surface of the planet Terminus. The singularity that powered the Invictus would have caused the planet to implode, and that's what happened, just like what happens with the black hole. So the question is, was the Invictus destroyed as well, or was it consumed within the singularity, or did it jump away? Now, because when Harry showed the 8th crisis to Gale, the math bubble showed the Invictus, and that could have been a vision of the past, or the present, or the future. And within a black hole, is there any difference between past, present, and future? We learned in Season 3 that the Novacula harnesses the power of a black hole and that the target of the weapon is still there, although forever changed. Now that's what the Novacula scientist Ely Carvis told Cleon 23. The weapon seems to cause an implosion, which is how scientists have described black holes and the infinite density at the center. Now, I understand from the Bible that only God is infinite, so maybe this could explain why Farah says the Invictus ship seemed to be calling to her, and when it appeared, she says she finally understood her purpose, which sounds like a spiritual interpretation of all that's happened to her. So, was the Invictus destroyed in Season 2? The showrunner for the past 3 seasons, David S. Goyer, said as follows: "The Invictus was damaged. Yes, they were trying to warp away, but it was going to create an implosion regardless." So, I would guess from that statement that the Invictus jumped away and is still out there. The word Invictus comes from the Latin and means undefeated. Now, with the Novacula, there's quantum decoherence as described this season in Episode 6, when, along with Demerzel, we watched Gale's vision of orbiting the ergosphere of a black hole. Now, that seems to be after the Novacula's been fired. Now, I don't think it's that type of thing with the Invictus, if the show follows David S. Goyer's original plan. He mentioned in interviews he planned for 8 seasons, with the last 2 seasons going beyond the books to describe humanity's encounter with a hostile force that Isaac Asimov had hinted at in the book sequels, but he died before he wrote those books. Now, the hostile force seems to be the Exo scrawled in blood on board the Invictus. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe.